Hello everyone and welcome to Derp your Hooves. Today we're going to talk a little bit about liveries and trying to give you a basic tutorial. It's a lot to learn, but let's go over the basics. So I am using Clip Studio Paint and GIMP to edit these liveries. We're not doing a fresh livery, we're just going to modify it. Modify one of the original packages to something historical but a little different. So the first thing is we have a skin and we're going to use it, but we want to rearrange it. We want to get rid of the things that are on it. So we have to convert the DDS file from the project folder that holds the aircraft into a PNG file to work with it. And we're going to have to make layers. And I've already made a layer 1. And what I'm doing right now is I selected the color to go ahead and delete this registration because there's going to be a Air Force logo where that is, and the registration on this model is lower. The Air Force, the military, various militaries, they did stuff like this in service as they repaint airplanes. So the problem is we don't have a blank file because we weren't provided one from the creator that we bought the plane from. So if we're going to modify it, we have to do this by scratch, which makes it a little more difficult. And it's worth it. And there's a Norton pop-up. Yeah, okay. Got to turn those Norton pop-ups off. But it's always good to have antivirus. So here we are, and I'm just basically erasing the letters. I created a layer over it, and I'm erasing the numbers of the registration. And I'm doing it here, and I'm just doing a rough pass to start. And as I go ahead and I do this, again, I'm just going over it, and I'm going over it, and I'm just kind of getting rid of it. And you're going to see when I zoom out that it's going to look blotchy, and you're going to see that there were numbers there. And so we have to blend it. And this all takes time, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, so you have to have patience, otherwise you get sloppy results. So while I'm erasing the registration, I have time to actually talk about how to take care of a livery here, how to create one. And this is just the image files. This isn't the data setting files. I mean, this isn't creating a livery from scratch. This is modifying one here. This is just doing the skins. So you can see I've already deleted those 2 letters. When I zoomed out, you can see that they're blocky. So I'm doing some basic techniques. I mean, you guys, I'm not going to go into techniques and art techniques. I'm just going into what works for the simulator and how to change a skin file. You guys are going to have to learn some of this on your own. And again, I'm not using Photoshop or any Adobe products. There's workarounds. I use GIMP, and I have an extension on GIMP to convert the files to what I need to back and forth. And I also have Clip Studio Pro, which is just as good, if not better, sometimes than the Adobe products, and at a fraction of the cost. So we do workarounds here because we're not professional artists charging a living salary. We're doing this for fun. If you want to use Photoshop, you can use similar techniques, and there's shortcuts, and you're going to have to pay for the Adobe products. Again, I pick and choose what I pay for. And anyhow, so here I am, and I'm erasing the registration. You're also going to see here, this is like the main image file, and I don't know what its technical name is, but it's the main image. Now, this aircraft that I'm working on, the F-104 Starfighter, has an aluminum background, and so you're going to have like a shader file, which in like DCS world is called roughmet, and it basically determines the transparency, how the light bounces off the file. I don't know the specifics of how it's programmed. I just know that you need the 2 files, especially for this livery. So you're going to see at one point, we're going to do this, and then we're going to modify the shader file too, which is the same thing. And it's really important that you do this because you'll see what happens if you don't, and I'll touch on that when we get there. So there are 2 main files. There's the general texture file, the skin that you're working on here, and then there's the shader file. So don't forget that, because you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to go, what was that? And yeah, it's just the way things are. It's like a shader file. I forget, every designer, some people call it a different thing. They give it a different naming convention. So you're going to have to modify that too if you're doing it from scratch like this. So, have patience, take time, and enjoy it. Because, if you rush it, it's going to show. So, just really take your time and enjoy it. So here I am, and I'm just kind of going over it. I'm using a selector tool on the layer, and I'm just kind of carefully going over the letters or the numbers, or the object that I want to get rid of, because I really don't want to. I'm going to do some blending here shortly, and I really don't want to have to do too much blending to already master what the head texturer graphic artist at SimSkunkWorks, who made this livery when I bought the F-104 Starfighter did. They did a great job. I just want a different livery. So again, if you're going to do these liveries, have patience and know that you're not using the erase tool. That makes things even worse. You're actually going to paint over it as if it was a physical surface, like it was the actual tail of the plane. Now, this again is why we use layers, and this is why graphic designers and artists and digital artists use layers, because you can just delete the layers. You can have a template, and then you can do things in layers, and if you make a mistake, you don't have to go back and do it all over again. So layering is important, and keeping track of what your layers is, but working in layers is better than spending all this time repainting something or painting something just to realize that you messed it up, and you spent hours doing it, when you could have just saved as you went along, made a layer, saved, made a layer, and then just fixed the layer. So anyhow, again, I'm going to skip through, and it's going to kind of cut through with some things around here. So anyhow, here you can see that I've kind of taken the numbers out, and I'm just kind of going over it and blending it. And as I'm starting to blend it, and I'm using a blend layer and all, you'll see as I go along. Again, I wanted to discuss these file formats, because it's really important to know your file formats, and you can watch me blend as I talk about the file formats and fix my blending, because you see that the registration looks good that it's gone, but I'm still blending. You have a .dds file, which is basically a PNG, or a portable network graphics file, and it has to be saved as a DDS file, and you have to save it with MIP maps, and you can save it in a DXT1 format, and you'll see me select those formats. This is, from my understanding, and some of today's modern programs, like the flight sims and stuff, it's when you zoom out of the object, it has to be able to still show the livery, and this is one way of doing it, is you save it in this .dds file. I know for Photoshop users, there's like some kind of just easy way to save it as such a file. In this way, the way I'm doing it, I'm using Clip Studio, and I'm working as I convert it to a .png file, portable network graphics file, and I edit that, and once I'm done editing that, then I change that. I open it, I save my changes, and I open the file with GIMP. And then when I'm happy, I save it as a DDS, so it's a separate file. Give it a name, set its properties, and it's always the same properties. And there's reasons for it, for saving it certain ways with the DXT5 versus the DXT1. Just better quality images. Sometimes it takes up more or less space. So you have to do it this way. And I'm kind of skimming over things because it's, to explain why would be very complicated. So I'm just trying to give you the basics of this is the way you have to do it. If you don't do it this way, depending on how the aircraft was set up by whoever designed it, because there's different ways of making the config files for the skins, etc., etc., etc. If it's done a certain way and you don't save them in the right format, it won't register, and you'll get the pink checkerboard when you load the aircraft with your skins on it in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you'll go, what? I did all this work and it's not working, and it's because you saved it in the wrong format. It commonly does that to .png files. I've seen it use a PNG file, but it will also lag in the game. Your whole plane will lag the simulator because it's in the wrong format, and it takes up too much information, so it lags the game. So there's reasons for all these file compressions. We'd have to ask a programmer why, but this is just the way it's done. So here I am, and I'm blending, and I wanted to go over this while I'm blending because you'll see me select the settings coming up as I finish and I change it, and I'm explaining it in advance so that you can see it as I save the file. So keep that in mind when I close this out and then I open it back up in GIMP, and I save it as a DDS. There's reasons behind it. So again, organization. If you're going to be doing this, you're going to have different files. And I also want to discuss naming convention. Again, while I'm blending, this is the perfect time because this is what takes the most time. Naming conventions are important because the file has to have the exact same name as it does in the aircraft config file and the layout file. If the names are wrong of the file, then again, you're going to get the pink dot, or you're just going to get the, you're not going to get what you want. You're going to get this weird looking pink checkerboard aircraft, and it's because you didn't name it right. The computer needs to know that it's the same name. So what you can do is you can make a backup copy if you're editing something. Always make a backup copy of what you're editing and put it somewhere safe, out of the way, so you don't touch it, because if you make changes to that and you save it, then it's permanent. And if that's the only copy that you have, then you might have ruined it. So always organize, make folders, organize a project just like you would anything else. Save the originals, work on a copy of the original, make a copy of the copy to work on it. And when I've been doing some of these liveries, sometimes I have so many copies of little things I had to tweak because all kinds of reasons. The model's set up in a weird way. And you'll kind of learn this as you go along, but these are just the basics. And this really is the basics. This is like 101. So make sure you make copies of everything. Work in layers. Take time, experiment. Don't get so frustrated you give up. This is basically art, and it takes as long as it takes. And it has to be perfect, especially when it comes to the naming conventions, because the computer doesn't care about how pretty it is or how much time you put into it. It just cares that the file name is the exact same file name. So what I'll do is, and you'll see it later too, is I will just copy the file name of the original and paste it over whatever I call this file so that it's the same thing. That's if I'm modifying something. Now, if I'm doing something from scratch, then yeah, I'm going to have to, be mindful of what my naming convention is and as I program the config files. But if you're not going to make liveries from scratch and you're just going to modify something that you got from someone else for your own use that you're not going to post, then, just you can use the same naming convention that they used because, it's not your work. And I'm also going to touch on that really quick, too, is that a lot of the artists get really upset, and I can understand why, and look at how much effort it takes when someone just chops up what they did and then calls it their own. If you go to like flightsim.to and you make liveries or you edit liveries, usually artists will say you can or can't modify the file, or you can with my permission. And a lot of us, are open to it. I've had to ask other people, and I've usually got okay, yeah, if I'm going to post it for the whole world to have, especially if I'm going to sell it and make a profit on it, you really should be selling your own work. And if you're going to modify someone else's, then you really should ask them for their permission. So yeah, here we are, and I'm just doing one side of the tail and one side of the fuselage with a new registration number and a shield and a lightning bolt, which came on the F-104. I forget what squadron it was. I just really like it. So we're only going to do one side of the tail because it's a tutorial. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. It'll take forever. And I'm just doing this to demonstrate my point. And here I am using the basic selection tool to mask things off as I blend. And I'm going to go ahead here and skip ahead and start showing you some of the other stuff. So here we have the shield, the squadron shield. I worked on it separately with a lightning bolt, and we're going to place it over the tail. Again, because the layers were already saved. Had this been a layered project, I wouldn't have had to do less extra work. But I obviously had to get rid of the registration number to put the shield and the lightning bolt up, which is what was on the aircraft. So now that I've saved my file as a PNG and as a Clip Studio, so I have it in layers, I'm going to open it with GIMP. And this is where I'm actually going to convert it to the .dds file. And this is how you convert it. You export it as, and forgive me, my RAM's kind of maxed out. Here we go. And we're going to export it as a DDS file. DDS image. We hit export, and it asks us, and I want that DXT5, generate mipmaps, and OK. And I specify where it is. I'm putting it on. So what I did there was I saved it, and I navigated to where the actual file is. This is the actual aircraft, and I'm taking it here. I'm taking the original file, and I'm going to copy it and put it where it belongs. That was the path, by the way. It's Microsoft Flight Simulator Packages Community. I'll put the path in the description. I'm using Steam, but it's going to be your username. And I'll put the path to the file, the folder where you save your files. So you can see that right now I'm making a backup of the original. And then I have mine. And I'm going to rename mine, or I'm going to rename the original, and I've already renamed mine. So we're basically just replacing the file, and then we're going to go ahead and launch the simulator and take a look at what we've got. So, you see, we did the main skin file, but there's still the shadow of what we deleted. The other side looks like that. We left that alone. And we just did this side, but there's a shadow because it's Chrome, and because there's a RoughMet file, which I was talking about for the lighting. And you'll see it as I zoom out and kind of walk around, and in some of the third-party aircraft you can do this. take an external walk around the aircraft. So you see I'm walking around, I'm looking at the tail, and there's my registration, there's the old registration, and the decal too is like in there. And again, this has to do with colors, it has to do with the rough met, it has to do with lighting. If you like Minecraft, it would be like, I guess, a shader file. So it's actually a two-part image. And in order to fix this, we're going to go ahead and have to modify the rough met file, or the comp file is what it's called in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Rough met is DCS world. Comp is the naming convention for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So here it is. And I've already made a copy of it. And again, it's got the original. So I have to edit it much like I edited the original skin. And if you don't do this, you're going to end up with that weird ghosting. And if you've ever done liveries and you see something and you see an image, like the light hits the aircraft and there's like shadows of what used to be there, it's because there's a comp file. And the comp file hasn't been changed, and so it still has, some of these comp files are photo perfect to the image that was there. So you have to edit the comp file, or you have to create a new one. Again, if you're doing a livery from scratch, it's easy to just, make your own comp file. And all the different colors and everything, they have different values. So we're doing a chrome, and that's why it's got this purplish pink and the yellow, and we're going to see what it looks like. So anyhow, I've perfectly edited my comp file, and I've loaded the aircraft, and it's still two sides. It's a work in progress. And you had to edit the comp file, and you have to do all that yellow shading, and you have to do all the colors underneath to all the images if you're using Chrome, because when the light hits it, you're going to see as I walk around, it would be transparent like it was in the hangar. And that's why it has to be yellow, and it has to be purple, and it has to be pink, because when you're working with Chrome, it's really unforgiving. And these image files have to be, they have to have a mask or the comp file, because otherwise they'll be transparent and it won't look right. So anyhow, there you have it. That's what it looks like. And that's the original. And when you do it right, and you do the whole aircraft, you'll see that it'll look perfect. And I'm just doing this to demonstrate the basics. So you have your comp file, and you have your main image file. And we're actually working with Chrome, which for some people is a challenge. It was really stressful for me because I didn't understand it in the beginning. And again, you have these comp files. They're your light shader files. And if you don't edit both of them, you're going to end up with transparent files. So here you go. And this is the tail of the F-104, and this is going to be the end of part 1. And I hope that this was helpful to some people out there. Well, thanks for watching. And if you like what you saw, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope it was helpful today. And again, I look forward to seeing you guys in the skies.